welcome to Physio Move and Groove. I have a really exciting show for you today. We're actually on location in beautiful Costa Mujeres, Mexico. There's a beautiful ocean out here that you can see. So welcome everyone. If you're new to this channel, my name is Jeannie. I'm a physical therapist with over 25 years of experience helping people to be able to move well, feel well, and be well. So you can hopefully subscribe to my channel, check us out on the Facebook page. It's Physio Move, the old and sign, Groove, and get some more information to help you to be able to keep on moving. So today I figured since we're in beautiful Mexico, we would do something on stretching. This is something that a lot of people forget to do. So they're all about the workout, they're all, I'm gonna go for my run, I'm gonna do all these activities, but then they forget to stretch. Or if they do stretch, this is pretty much what people do. Okay, yeah, all right, good, little calf stretch, good to go, and they're on their way. So a few things that people most often ask me is, what kind of stretching should I do? When should I stretch? And how long I should hold a stretch? So hopefully you're gonna learn a lot today. I'm gonna focus more on lower extremity stretching. I like to run, and so I tend to do a lot more lower extremity stretching. We're gonna do 4 different muscle groups today, and we'll go over different varieties of how you can stretch it, because I understand that everyone's at different levels. So I wanna give you some options for different ways that you can stretch. So here we go. First off, let's start with, there are 2 different types of stretches. There is something called a dynamic stretch and something called a static stretch. Please, if you don't even get everything, you don't end up listening to this whole video, please take this one message home. And this is that static stretching should only be done after you do an activity. A lot of times people think, okay, I need to stretch out my muscles, hold them for a while, and then I'm gonna go for a run, or then I'm gonna play my sport. But honestly, if you do that, you're actually lengthening the muscle, and then you're asking it to do a really short contraction. This is actually how muscle strains occur. So a lot of research has been done in this topic as to when you should actually do a static stretch, and people, it should always be done after your activity. Dynamic stretching, which is movement stretches, warm-ups, those should all be done before your activity. So that's the very first lesson I want you to really keep in mind. Do not static stretch means holding a stretch for a period of time before you do an activity. Okay, so now what are the benefits of stretching? So for many, one of the big benefits that people do it for, so they don't get that lactic acid buildup after you've worked out. So it helps to lengthen that muscle. And we know that if you can have a muscle that moves better and you can strengthen it then at its full length, it's going to be more effective. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize is the difference or the effect of stretching a muscle on the opposite side of the muscle you're trying to strengthen. So that sounds a little confusing, so I'm going to just explain it a little bit better for you. So let's say you have a tight hip flexor, which is the muscle in the front, which most of us do because we spend so much time sitting. If this muscle is tight, guess what muscle is going to be super long? That's going to be your glute muscle here. So if you have a super tight hip flexor, you're not going to be able to strengthen your glute muscle as efficiently as you could if your hip flexor was stretched out. The same thing goes with our postural muscles, right? So let's say our pecs are super tight, then guess what? All the muscles in and around our shoulder blades, they're super lengthened. A super lengthened muscle is not going to be able to contract as efficiently as a regularly lengthened muscle. So when we actually stretch out the muscle on the front, the muscle that's on the back is going to be able to strengthen more efficiently. So that's another reason why you really want to incorporate stretching. And then next, the biggest question is, how long should I hold a stretch for? The answer is long. So most of the time, people do not hold stretches for long enough. They think 10 seconds, I'm good to go, but actually you should do it for about 30 seconds 4 times on each muscle group, and on each side as well. When you first start to do a stretch, the first 10 seconds, your body's fighting it. So 10 seconds is not long enough to have the benefit that a 30-second stretch 4 times will have. So roughly about 2 minutes is what we're looking to stretch. All right, so let's get ready and get into our stretching. So the first muscle that we're going to stretch out is our hip flexors. So as I was saying, I know, cheesy, but have to throw it in there. So the hip flexor muscles, we actually have 4 quadricep muscles, but one of our quadricep muscles is actually a hip flexor too. So when you talk about stretching the hip flexors, you're also stretching your quadricep muscles too. Now, I'm going to show you some mistakes that people tend to make when they stretch their hip flexor, just so that you can be aware, and corrections that you want to make to get a more effective stretch. So, the traditional way to stretch your hip flexor is to get down on the floor, and as I said, I will give you options of different ways you can do this if you can't get down on the floor as easily. So, the leg that I am stretching is going to be the back leg, okay? Super important here, a lot of times when people do hip flexor stretches, they lean forward like this. I can tell you that you are not going to get a good hip flexor stretch if your back is not straight. So that's the first off, and the mistake that some people make. So we want to have our leg in front, the leg behind. Turn your foot just slightly outwards like this. It just will get the front of the hip a little bit better. You're going to lean forward. Your back actually should stay up straight. And then you're going to tuck your tail under. So as soon as you tuck that tail under, you'll get way more of a stretch on that hip flexor. You can raise your arms up if you feel comfortable. It'll just give you even more of a stretch. But again, you want to hold that stretch for 30 seconds, which is a really long time. But it's important to be able to do that. Now, if it's hard for you to balance in this position, you can get a little table beside you, and you can do it beside your kitchen table. That works really well. Now, something else to think about too is these muscles that we're stretching, they actually aren't just straight muscles. They kind of wrap around in the inside and the outside. So if you want to get your muscles to be stretched, you should stretch them in all 3 planes of movement, which we've discussed earlier in previous videos about our 3 planes. So the best way to do that is to kind of get yourself in that position. Arms will go straight up, and then you can lean back and forth. When you lean back and forth like this, you're actually going to get a little bit more of a stretch, but you can also then tie in that frontal plane, so you kind of move your hips side to side, and you'll feel this in different areas of that hip flexor muscle. And then you can also do a little bit of rotation too. And when you rotate again, you'll feel that in different areas and different parts of the muscle. So you're really getting a more effective stretch of the muscle by doing those movements. Okay, so let's go over some options for your hip flexors, just in case getting down on the floor is kind of tough for you. This table's kind of high, but we're just gonna go with it because we're on vacation and we wanna roll with these punches here. But you can use a sofa, or your bed is usually a pretty good height. And basically what you can do is just stick your leg, we'll go left leg now, so we can stretch out that other leg. And you put your foot on the top here, just like that. And then the same thing you're gonna do, you're gonna tuck that tail under. Once you tuck the tail under, you really will feel a stretch on that hip flexor. And again, make sure you're up tall, you're not leaning forward, okay? Sometimes I'll see people do these stretches where they're really leaning forward. If your intention is to stretch the hip flexor, if you're leaning forward, you're just taking that stretch out of position. And then again, in this position, you can do the same forward and back, hip shifting movements, or side to side movements, okay? So that basically gets your hip flexor. You'll probably feel it in your quad as well. You can do the traditional quad stretch, which is just bringing that leg up a little bit more. Again, if you tuck your tail under, you're gonna feel it a little bit higher up in that quad, so you can get quad and hip flexor at the same time. All right, people, so that is our hip flexors. We have stretched those out pretty well. You've done 4 of them, 30 seconds each leg, and we're gonna move on to a different muscle group. We are gonna talk about our gastrocnemius and our soleus muscle. Those are our calf muscles. I will tell you this, everybody does a fantastic job of stretching out their gastrocs. Almost everyone forgets to stretch their soleus. And it's so important to stretch out both. Soleus goes a little bit further down towards your foot than what the gastroc does, but they're both super important to stretch. Few different ways that you can stretch out this. We're gonna do the usual traditional way. One foot goes in front, one foot goes behind, and you kind of lean forward into a lunge type position. The important part with this is that your back foot is straight. So a lot of times people will do this. If you do that, you are no longer stretching your calf muscle. You've just taken the stretch off of it. So super important that you keep your leg straight as you're stretching it. Okay, that's one really important note. So then you just are gonna lean forward and you're gonna hold it. And you can hold on to something to help you to be able to balance too. Heel stays down and you just hold it there. The thing about stretching is as soon as you feel a pull, you're in a good position. You do not have to do these excessive stretches. Stretches should not be painful. If a stretch is painful, guess what? You're gonna tighten. And when you tighten, you're not going to get as effective as a stretch. So do the stretch so that you can just relax into it. And what you'll find is after you do one at a 30-second hold, you take a little break in between, and you go to do your next one, it'll be easier. Your muscle will already be prepared for that stretch. Okay, so this is our gastroc stretch. Now, the difference here, so that we can add on our soleus, is all you have to do now is bend your back knee. So as soon as you bend that back knee, keep your heel down, you're getting a different muscle. You're getting your soleus muscle, equally as important to stretch. And then same thing, you wanna hold this for 30 seconds and do it 4 to 5 times on each leg. Okay, so we've got our gastroc, higher up muscle, leg is straight, and then all you're doing is bending your knee. Now be careful, sometimes people pick up their heel, then what you're doing is you're taking the stretch off of that muscle. So again, you just wanna keep the knee bent, but the heel stays down. Pretty simple, you're getting both muscle groups, and you're just relaxing. Boy, it's nice out here by the ocean. This is a really good area to stretch. Okay, so 4 times, 30 seconds each leg. All right, so now we've done those 2 groups. Hamstrings. Hamstrings are notorious for being tight, especially in runners, because we're constantly using the hamstrings, bending our legs. So we want to stretch those out. It is also another muscle that I see a lot of people stretching improperly. So let's say I want to stretch my hamstring. I'm going to put my leg up on something here, right? And then what do people do? They do this. Okay, well, I can tell you right now, I don't feel anything in my hamstring at all. Why? Because I'm bending my back. So same thing as what we talked about with the hip flexor, is you want to be able to stand up tall. That's the key. And you hinge from your hip. If I hinge from my hip, I already feel this in my hamstring. So really easy to do. You do not have to go far if you have tight hamstrings like me. So you stay straight, you lean forward, and you hold it there. 30 seconds. Really long time again. So this is a pretty common way to stretch a hamstring, pretty easy way to stretch a hamstring. You'll see sometimes people will do the traditional hamstring stretch. They'll get down on the floor, put one leg in, okay? Same thing, you can stretch your hamstring like this, just don't do this. Back is rounded, not even gonna feel it in my hamstring. Sit up tall, hinge from your hip, boom, I feel it in my hamstring already. Toes up as well, that's gonna help to get the hamstring all the way along that line. So then, same thing, you're just gonna hold it here, 30 seconds, 4 times. Okay, so those are some options for the hamstrings. Now we will move on to our piriformis muscle. Another muscle that gets really tight, runs across the back of your butt, especially can become a problem for people who have sciatica. That sciatic nerve runs right underneath that piriformis, so super important that that muscle is stretched out and is flexible. So a very common stretch that we do is a piriformis stretch. You have 2 different fibers of your piriformis muscle. You have ones that are stretched when your leg is above 90 degrees and one that is stretched when your leg is below 90 degrees. You must stretch them both out to really have an effective piriformis stretch. Okay, so we're gonna come down on the ground again, but I'm gonna show you an option that doesn't require you to go down on the ground. And we're gonna do a couple piriformis stretches. So first one, traditional way, is to just bring your leg up and cross it like this, okay? Now, if this is enough of a stretch for you, you already feel it, guess what, folks? You'll leave it here. And then you can even gently push it down and relax. Now, the other thing, too, I didn't mention is you must breathe. You must breathe through these stretches. You'll get a more effective stretch if you breathe. Now, if you're like, I don't really feel this stretch, you can move it up. You want to be a little bit spicy, you can bend this even forward a little bit more. Hold it there for 30 seconds again, 4 to 5 times on each leg. Okay, so this is a great piriformis stretch. Now the other option for you too, to get a little bit different fibers of that piriformis muscle, is done in sitting. You'll cross your one leg over, and then you'll bring it across, okay? So these are the fibers that are below the 90 degrees. So the one where you bring your leg above 90 degrees, this will get the different fibers of your piriformis muscle for below the 90 degrees. Okay, now let's say you can't get down on the floor and you would like an option up and standing. We can do that. You'll just move yourself up, and as I said again, this table, a little bit high, but you can put your leg up on a couch. It works just as well. On your bed works as well too. We can bring our leg up into this position like this, and then you can lean forward. That's going to get that piriformis. As we talked about previous too, you can go forward and back with it. You can go side to side with it. You can rotate. You'll really feel this in all different areas of your hip. Another option for those that are really getting creative here, this is a pretty intense piriformis stretch, but if you're able to get yourself in this position, I feel this one the most. I think if you're yoga, I forget a yoga person, there's a certain name for this, but I'm not sure what it is. You can lean forward and go up, and then you'll really feel this in that hip as well. So this is a good piriformis stretch too. So any of these that you want to do, they all get the same muscle, 30-second hold, 4 to 5 times each leg, and that will be stretching out that piriformis. So hopefully you've learned some things today on different options for you to be able to stretch out these lower extremity muscles. Super important. In another video, we'll talk about dynamic stretching and warm up and why we do it and different ways of doing that. So again, please subscribe, like this channel, put in comments about things that you want me to cover to be able to help you to be able to move well, feel well, and be well. Catch you next Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Gotta go get